Hey, how's it going, guys? Got our 2006 Toyota Highlander Limited. We're going to be changing out some struts today. Recently got this car. At the time of recording this car is almost 20 years old. It's got about 175,000 miles. Suspension is really soft. The rear bottoms out pretty hard, just going over speed bumps even without anybody in the cargo area or in the second row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the ride height. I'm going to just measure from the center of the wheel up to the fender. We got about 17.5 inches in the front. $17 inches in the rear. The car does seem to be sagging quite a bit. And like I said, when you go over bumps, it bottoms out pretty hard in the back, and there's like no dampening, so I assume the struts are pretty blown out. All right, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to put down the second row seat. I'm going to pop this little cover off. 10mm screw right here. Go ahead and take that out. Okay, and then this thing is going to pop this way out from here. Like that. Ew, look how nasty that is. And that exposes your strut top mount nuts. Next is going to be to remove your wheels. We're starting here in the back. Go ahead and use your 21mm socket to remove your lug nuts. Remove these 10mm screws for our ABS line. We have one here on the wheel well and then one down here on the strut. Go ahead and move that to the side. Then we have a 12mm here for the brake line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and soak these mounting bolts with some WD-40 or penetrating oil. Same thing with the sway bar link here, the upper one. Even though I don't have a lot of rust, it's just to prevent galling. If you are in an area where there's a lot of rust, make sure you're definitely putting some penetrating oil on those and let it sit, you know, maybe for an hour or so. Okay, now using a 14mm socket on a 1/2 inch gun, we're going to try to zap this upper link off. It's almost there. Now using a 19mm, we're going to go ahead and take these mounting bolts off, or nuts. Okay, what I like to do is put the nuts on backwards. And then you could hit it with the hammer right here. Just go ahead and tap that. Do the same thing. Because if you put the nut on this way and you hammer it, you're going to flare it over and then the socket won't fit. So if you put it over backwards, you won't damage the threads. And that should loosen it up enough to get the bolt out the rest of the way. Okay, now from the inside with a 14mm socket, you're going to go ahead and take these 3 nuts off. But the last one, you're only going to loosen it or else the strut will fall all the way down. All right, so now what you're going to do is with that last screw just loose, you're going to reach around the car, hold up the strut while you loosen this so that the strut doesn't fall down. Okay, now that the strut is loose, you have to try to work it out of here. Like that. These are the struts we're going to be going with. They are a Monroe Quick Strut. We got part numbers 17211, 12, 13, and 14. I believe for the front wheel drive Highlanders, they only offer one strut across all the different trim levels. So I'm kind of hoping that these are going to be a little stiffer than stock. I was trying to go with the original Toyota stuff, but it was just way out of my price range. Even with an employee discount from Toyota, it was going to be almost $2,200. Through Summit Racing, I was able to find KYB struts and top mounts and everything to put it together without springs, and that was going to be about $800 to $900, and then springs would be another $400 for all 4 springs, so that would put it over about $1,200. I got these struts, like I said, from work, and even compared to Amazon, you can get these on Amazon for about the same price, about $550. So that's kind of what I went through right now. Again, like I said, I would have loved to go with Toyota or even KYBs, but it was just way out of my budget for the moment. My 2 other cars are needing some work too, so I'm kind of limited in going with these. But we're going to go ahead and put them on and see how they work. Hopefully they work better than what's on there right now. Okay, so here's our 2 struts compared to each other. This one is the factory one. You can even see it right here as a part number. It actually says KYB on it, and that's who manufactures the factory struts for Toyota. This one is all blown out. You can see the little bumper is completely just destroyed. The boot is gone. The spring, I don't know if it's worn out or not. What I might do is take this off and just, see how this strut is actually, if it's holding any compression or rebound. But we're going to go ahead and get this in. This new strut does come with new top nuts, but I think I'm going to use the original Toyota ones. I like the way these look a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and get it in. Another thing too, before you put it in, I think it's a good idea to remove any kind of stickers that might be on the spring, just so you don't get weird abnormal noises while you're driving down the road. This thing might be flapping around making some kind of noise. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to lift the strut into the body and then hold it while you put the nuts on the inside. Now you can get the other 2 nuts started. You just want to run these down and then we're going to torque them after we get the weight of the car down onto the strut. So we're just going to lightly seat these. Okay, now that we got the strut up into the body and the nuts on and ran down, we're going to go ahead and get this knuckle back here into place. So it takes a little work to get it in there. You kind of have to push and wiggle it around, but once you get it started, it should go. I'm going to go ahead and put our nuts on here, top and bottom. We'll run those down and then we'll torque them. All right, now we're going to go ahead and torque these 175 foot-pounds. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and get our sway bar link back on. Zap that on. I think it's like 40 foot-pounds for that guy. Okay, now all we have to do is resecure our brake line and our wheel sensor screws here, and this side is done. These two 10mm screws here. Then our brake line with a 12mm. Again, that's the size of the head of the socket. I know it's not the size of the bolt. Okay, so we got the rear of the car back on the floor. Car is no longer supported by jack stands or a jack. We torqued the lug nuts. Now we're gonna go in here and we're gonna torque these top nuts. So about 40-45 foot-pounds. Okay, we got the rears done. Now we're about to do the front. I got it jacked up here by the cross member and also supported by some jack stands. Got the parking brake on, and we got the wheels chalked just for some extra precaution. So we're going to go ahead and get the wheels off, and then we'll get going on this front strut. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and start with removing our ABS line, or our wheel speed sensor line, our brake line bolts. So this one is secured by this 12mm. Then we also have a 10mm up here we're going to loosen just to give a little bit more slack. So these two guys here, brake line, ABS line, we got the 110mm up here. That'll just give us a little extra room to move the knuckle out of the way. And then this guy down here is just clipped on. Go ahead and spread those apart. Pop it out of the way, like so. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and remove our sway bar link. Takes a 17mm socket. I'm using a 1/2 inch ratchet, or not a ratchet, a 1/2 inch impact, and then just kind of hold and then zap it off. Again, if you live in an area that has a lot of rust, that might not come off as easy. You might have to get in here and hold it with some vice grips or something. Ball joint. These tie rod links are a little worn out. Change those. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and break these loose first with a breaker bar. My air compressor is not that strong here at home. All right, now that I got those broken loose with the breaker bar, we're gonna go ahead and zap these off with the air gun. Then I'm gonna hold this other side with another 22. If you don't have a 22, a 7/8 will fit. There we go. Go ahead and do the same thing for the bottom. Just knock that through just to get the little shoulder to break whatever rust may be in there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove those bolts. If you kind of just whack on the disc, it'll loosen it up. Okay, and you want to be careful when you're pulling these bolts out that the knuckle just doesn't fall out and pull your CV axle out. So I do have a bungee cord ready to support it once it gives way. And go ahead and give the strut a little whack. Okay, and then we could put our knuckle off to the side here and go ahead and hook on a bungee cord and secure that to the front of the vehicle. Okay, so we got our knuckle secure with the bungee cord. I was able to wrap it around the subframe there. Just keep it out of the way. Strut's now free. We could come up top and we could undo our top mounting bolts. Okay, now up here in the engine bay, got the hood open, of course. We're going to go ahead and take off these 3 14mm nuts, but we're not going to go ahead and take it off all the way. We'll take 2 off, and then one we'll leave it just hanging on by the end so the strut doesn't fall out. Okay, we put those somewhere so we don't lose them. Now we're going to support the strut from the bottom and finish taking the nut off. Go ahead and support the strut here, take the nut off, and then you should be able to lower the strut down. And now we need to wrestle the strut out of here. There we go. Okay, here's our 2 struts. You got the old one on the right, the new one on the left. Again, I'm running these quick struts because the factory ones were just way too far out of my budget right now. Okay, one thing to note before putting in the new strut, see this factory one, it has a dot here. So on this passenger side, you could see the dot is facing the outside of the car. The driver's side, when I took it off, was facing the outside of the car. So we want to make sure, see this new one doesn't have a dot. But if you look at this mount, it has a slant to it. The slant is going towards the dot. So we just want to make sure that we have this dot and the slant facing the outside of the car. If you want, you could put some paint marker right there. That's up to you. But as long as you see the orientation of this mount is going the same way, and you put it in the car the same way that this one came out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this strut installed in the car. Try to just do it in the reverse. Going to slip this in between the axle and the what did I call the outer tie rod. Slip that past the fender there, and then up into the body. Once you get one of the nuts started, it's pretty much good to go. And again, we're not tightening those nuts until we have the weight of the car down on the tires. Okay, now it's just doing the reverse. We got to get this knuckle back here into the strut. You might need to straighten this out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and unbungee cord this. Okay, get our knuckle back into place. Make sure you don't pinch any of these wires in the process. Got a bunch of dirt or rust. Now would be the time to clean it off. Okay. If it's too hard to like lift and push at the same time, you could probably put a jack underneath this. Just go ahead and get the bolts pushed through. Try to get this bottom bolt in. There we go. Go ahead and put our nuts on. Go ahead and put our nuts on. So these are not camber bolts. There's no adjustment here. So you shouldn't lose any of your alignment settings here. And then we're going to go ahead and zap those down. And then we'll torque them. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and torque these, 175 foot-pounds. The sway bar link, it seems like it's a little too long. But comparing the shocks together, they were in the same spot. So what I think I'm going to do is just take the sway bar link nut off the other side and see if that'll drop it down enough, just so we are not having all this binding going on here. Okay, that seemed to be a lot better. So it might just be off by, you know, a millimeter or a half or something like that. I'm going to end up replacing these anyways because they're kind of worn out. But we're going to go ahead and just get those on. Torque them to 40 foot-pounds. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put these wires and a brake line back on. Snap this back onto the knuckle. There's 2 little holes for it to snap in. And our brake line is going to, actually our ABS line I think goes first. And then our brake line goes on top of that. With our 12 millimeter bolt here. Again, 12 millimeter referring to the socket size. Go ahead and zap that on there, not super tight. Okay, and then we have our 1 screw up here on the fender well for the ABS line. That takes the 10 millimeter socket. And now we're going to go ahead and just run these down, just seated, and then we'll torque it once the weight of the vehicle is on the tires. Okay, we got both front struts in. We got the tires back on, lug nuts torqued. Car is back on the ground, no jack, no floor, no jack stands. Now we need to go ahead and tighten and torque these top mounts. We're going to go ahead and go 40 foot-pounds. We're going to run them down evenly. Go over them a few times. I did go ahead and reuse these factory nuts, just because I like the way they look better than the ones that come with the quick struts myself. Okay, both struts are in. Everything's torqued down. I went ahead and like pushed down on the car. There is a sticker on the struts that say after a while the springs will settle. But let's just get an initial measurement here. So we're at 18 inches in the front. We were at 17.5. In the back we were at 17. Now we're also at 18 inches. So this thing should be riding pretty level now. It definitely looks higher than it was before. Let's go take it for a road test. All right, here we are taking it for a road test. Did front and rear struts on this 06 Toyota Highlander. Again, like I said, it's almost 25, it's almost 20 years old. Guess if you count manufacture date and everything, and those were the original struts. 175,000 miles. We were getting like the knock in the front cowl here, going over little bumps and turning a little bit. That's gone. We gained about 1 inch of ride height in the back and a ½ an inch in the front compared to what it was with the old struts. It does say that they'll settle after driving it for a little bit, so I'll probably check back in about maybe 1,000 miles and see where they're at. Let's go check out some speed bumps. Corner's pretty nice. Don't get as much body roll as I used to. And then I also need to change those front sway bar links because they're bad. Not too bad where it will cause issues, but the boots are torn and the driver's side actually has some up and down play. So let's see, before on this sweeping turn we would get a lot of body roll. Seems a lot more stable. Before it was like, whoa, whoa, you felt like you were gonna roll over. Even little maneuvers, the whole car would kind of roll back and forth. We also used to get a lot of nosedive on the brakes. So they don't seem horribly stiff. If anything, they're still kind of soft, which is okay. Because I was looking at, this is a limited, I was looking at getting maybe some heavier springs, but nobody offers them. You would have to try to get like a hybrid spring. Okay, no noise over the speed bumps. Before we used to bottom out in the back. We used to hit the bump stops. And I even have my son in the back right now for a little added weight. There we go. That's better. So time will tell how these Monroe Quick Struts hold up. Like I said, in a perfect world, if I had a bunch of money and didn't have any other projects I needed to get done, I probably would have went with the KYBs. But I need to fix my wife's van. My other car needs some work. So this was the budget we had. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope this helps. We'll see you guys in the next one.